My name is Mark R. LePage, and you are listening to EntreArchitect Podcast, where each week I speak with inspiring, passionate people who share their knowledge and expertise, all to help you build a better business as a small firm entrepreneur architect. For more than a decade, I've spent a lot of time talking about how to build a better business, a better architecture firm. Better systems, better marketing, better financial management, better operations, better technology, better ways to attract clients and build teams. And all of those things matter. And in fact, I've built much of my work around helping architects improve those very things. But I've become increasingly convinced that there is another constraint on the growth of a small firm architecture firm that we don't really talk about nearly enough. You. Yeah, you. At some point, your architecture firm can't grow beyond your ability to lead it. And I don't mean that as a criticism. I mean that as an opportunity. Because the architect who started your firm may not be the leader your firm needs today. And the leader you are today may not be the leader your firm needs next. Think about why you started your architecture firm. I'm guessing it wasn't because you dreamed about organizational structure. You probably weren't lying awake at night thinking about performance reviews, financial dashboards, leadership development, delegation, strategic planning, or creating accountability within a team. You wanted to practice architecture. And maybe you wanted more control over your projects you worked on, and maybe you wanted to choose your clients. Maybe you wanted creative freedom. Maybe you thought you could build a better practice than the firms where you had worked previously, right? For many of us, it was some combination of all of those things. It was for me. So you started a firm. And initially your job was pretty simple. Not easy, but simple. Find work, do the work, get paid. You're probably the architect, the project manager, the marketer, the bookkeeper, the IT department, the receptionist, and probably even the janitor. When there was a problem, you solved it. When a client called, you answered. When something needed to get done, you did it. And that works. In fact, that behavior may be exactly what allowed you to survive those first few years. But then something happens. You get busier. You hire someone. And then maybe you hire someone else. Projects get larger. Clients expect more. Payroll gets bigger. There's more decisions, more responsibility, more opportunities, and more consequences when you make the wrong decision. Without anybody ever announcing it, your job changes. You're no longer just an architect who happens to own a business. You're becoming the leader of an organization. And nobody tells you exactly when that happens. There isn't a ceremony. You don't get a letter in the mail saying, congratulations, starting Monday, the skills you got here are no longer sufficient. It just happens. And I think that's where a lot of small firm architects get stuck. One of the things that I observed through EntreArchitect is that the habits that make someone a successful small firm founder can eventually become the same habits that limit the firm. Think about that. When you first started, being able to do everything yourself was the advantage, right? Later, doing everything yourself becomes the liability. Sound familiar? Early on, making every decision keeps things moving. Later, making every decision slows everything down. Early on, maintaining every client relationship personally helps you establish the reputation of the firm. But later, if every important client relationship depends on you, you haven't really built a firm. You've built a business around you. Early on, knowing every detail of every project is necessary. But later, needing to know every detail of every project makes it almost impossible for other people to lead. The behavior didn't necessarily change. Your context changed. And that's what makes this difficult, because many of these behaviors were rewarded. They worked. You built a successful practice by being responsive, by being responsible, by being knowledgeable, available, and willing to do whatever needed to be done. But then suddenly someone is telling you that you need to stop doing some of those things. That's hard, especially for architects. Architects are professional problem solvers. Give us a complicated site, a difficult program, a restrictive budget, an unreasonable zoning requirement, and 12 competing priorities, and we'll start figuring it out. That's what we do. So when someone on your team comes into your office with a problem, what happens? We solve it. They ask, Mark, what do you think we should do here? And before they've finished explaining the problem, I'm already developing the answer. I've probably experienced something similar before. I know what worked last time. I know the client. I understand the risk. I frankly can probably resolve the issue faster than the person standing in front of me. So I give them the answer. Problem solved. Except maybe it wasn't. Maybe I just created another problem. Because what did I just teach that person? I taught them that when they encounter something difficult, bring it to me. And what did I teach myself? I reinforced the idea that the business needs me to solve every problem, every difficult situation. Do that a few times every day for several years, and eventually you've created a very efficient system. Every difficult question travels directly to you. And then one day you look around and say, why does everybody need me for everything? Well, we trained them to do that. We trained them to need us. Let's take a quick break to say thank you to our sponsors for their support of this episode. As architects, we spend a lot of time getting the details right. The finishes, the flow, the way the light reflects in a space. But one of the most important details to figure out is how to protect your building when hundreds of people use it every day. That's exactly the problem InPro has spent decades solving. InPro has a full suite of commercial architectural products, from door and wall protection to expansion joint systems, and everything in between. All made to hold up for the long haul, without sacrificing the design intent you worked so hard to achieve. And for entrepreneur architects like you and me, I can't stress enough how valuable that is. Your reputation doesn't just depend on how your building looks at the ribbon cutting, but how it looks years down the line. InPro has been a trusted partner to architects and designers for decades, and it shows in the quality of the products they make and their ability to simplify projects as a single-source supplier. Check out their full portfolio of products made for real life at inpro.com. That's INPRO.com. Visit inpro.com today and tell them EntreArchitect sent you. This episode of EntreArchitect Podcast is supported by WeCollabify, one of our trusted allied partners. Over the years, I've learned that not all business relationships are created equal. Some companies simply want to sell you their products and services. There's nothing wrong with that. Every firm needs vendors. But the most valuable relationships often go much deeper. A trusted partner understands where you're headed. They understand the challenges you face. They understand and invest in your success because they know that their success is tied to yours. That's how we think about our allied partners. That's also why we're proud to work with WeCollabify. They help architecture and engineering firms expand their capacity by integrating skilled design, BIM, and technical professionals directly into their teams. Not as a separate resource to manage, but as part of the way the firm operates day to day. Their goal isn't simply to fill a position, it's to help firm owners create the capacity they need to serve clients well, support their teams, and make better long-term decisions about growth. If you're evaluating the people and organizations you rely on to support your firm, I encourage you to learn why WeCollabify is one of our trusted allied partners. Visit WeCollabify.com/EntreArchitect to learn more. That's WeCollabify.com/EntreArchitect. This episode of EntreArchitect Podcast is sponsored by ARCAT. If you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you've heard me talk about the importance of building systems that save time and reduce friction in your practice. That's exactly why I recommend ARCAT. When I need product information or specifications, CAD details, BIM objects, or sustainability documentation, I don't Want to hunt through dozens of manufacturer websites or fill out forms just to download a file? With ARCAT, I can find what I need fast, and everything is free to access. No subscription, no paywall. In fact, you don't even need to register with your email address. Just go to arcat.com, search for the product information you need, and get back to serving your clients. Thousands of architects use ARCAT every day because it simply makes work easier. Visit arcat.com and see why. That's ARCAT, ARCAT.com. Please visit our sponsors today and thank them. Thank them for supporting you, the EntreArchitect community. This is where everything gets even more interesting. Being needed feels good. When you're the person everyone comes to for answers, you feel valuable. Then the client insists that you attend the meeting. You feel important. When the project team can't make a decision without you, it reinforces your expertise. And when you swoop in and solve a problem that everyone else has been struggling with, you feel productive. And sometimes you absolutely should do those things. Leadership doesn't mean disappearing. It doesn't mean refusing to help people. It doesn't mean sitting in your office thinking strategic thoughts about everybody else's struggles. But there is a difference between supporting your team and making your team dependent on you. There's a difference between providing leadership and providing every answer. There's a difference between being valuable and being indispensable. And I think that distinction matters because if your goal is to build a strong architecture firm, your firm should eventually be capable of doing more without you. Not because you're less important, because your role has changed. This is the question that I've been thinking about more and more lately. What does your firm need from you now? Not what did it need when you started, not what are you particularly good at, not what do you enjoy doing. What does your firm actually need from you at this stage of its development? Maybe 3 years ago, your firm needed you to produce drawings. Today, it might need you to develop the next generation of project leaders. Maybe 5 years ago, it needed you to personally bring in every project. Today, it might need you to create a repeatable business development system that doesn't depend entirely on your relationships. Maybe your firm once needed you to review every invoice before it went out. Today, it might need you to establish financial systems and accountability so someone else can manage that process. Maybe your firm once needed you to be the best architect in the room. Today, it might need you to help everyone else in the room become better architects. Those are very different jobs. And this isn't only a question for firms with 20 or 30 employees. You could have 3 people. You could have 1 employee. You could be a sole practitioner. Leadership still matters. If you're a sole practitioner, the question becomes one of self-leadership. Are you spending your time on the things that actually move your business forward? Are you making intentional decisions about where the firm is going? Are you building systems that give you control over your time? Or are you simply reacting to whichever project, email, client, consultant, or deadline is demanding your attention today? The size of the firm changes the leadership challenge. It doesn't eliminate it. For years, when architects have talked to me about growing their firms, the conversation usually starts with the business. How do you get more projects? How do you get better projects? How do I increase my fees? How do I improve profitability? How do I build better systems? How do I hire? How do I delegate? How do I create a business that doesn't require me to work 60 hours a week? And those are all very important questions. But I've become increasingly interested in the question underneath those questions. What's the question behind the question? Who do you need to become in order to lead the firm you're trying to build? Because you can install new software. You can document a process. You can hire a marketing consultant. You can change your fee structure. You can implement a new project management system. But if every significant decision still comes back to you, there's a limit to what those systems can accomplish. Eventually, leadership development becomes business development. Improving your ability to make decisions becomes business development. Learning how to delegate becomes business development. Learning how to solve difficult conversations becomes business development. Developing other leaders becomes business development. Becoming clearer about where the firm is going becomes business development. And perhaps most importantly, learning what you should no longer be doing becomes business development. And that last one may be the hardest. Learning what you should no longer be doing. We tend to think about growth in terms of addition. What should we add? Another employee? Another service? Another market? Another system? Another office? Another $1 million in revenue? But I think meaningful growth often requires subtraction. You have to give something up. Maybe it's control. Maybe it's being involved in every project. Maybe it's being the person who always has the answer. Maybe it's the role you've always enjoyed, but someone else now needs to own it. Maybe it's the identity of being the architect who personally touches everything in the firm. That's not easy, I know. Because those things are connected to how we see ourselves. It's our identity as an architect. If you spent 20 years becoming an excellent architect, shifting your attention towards leadership can almost feel like you're moving away from architecture. I don't think that's what's happening at all. I think you're practicing architecture at a different scale. You're designing the conditions that allow people to do excellent work. You're creating the culture. You're establishing the standards. You're deciding what kind of projects the firm pursues. You're deciding the kind of clients you serve. You're deciding how people are treated. You're deciding what the firm values. You're deciding what the business will become. That's design. The medium is simply different. So here's what I want you to consider this week. Don't start by asking, how do I grow my firm? Ask, what does my firm need from me now that it didn't need from me 3 years ago? Spend some time with that question, because your answer may tell you a lot about what's holding your business back. And then ask yourself a harder question. What am I still doing because it's familiar, because I'm good at it, or because it makes me feel valuable, even though my firm needs something very different from me now? Maybe you're still solving problems someone else needs to start learning how to solve. Maybe you're still holding on to decisions someone else should be making. Maybe you're still doing work that you should have delegated 2 years ago. Maybe you're avoiding a difficult conversation. Maybe you're waiting for your team to become leaders without giving them the authority or the opportunity to lead. Whatever it is, identify one thing, not 10, one thing. And this week, change the way you approach it. Instead of answering the question, ask the person standing in front of you what they think. Instead of making the decision, establish the criteria and let someone else decide. Instead of doing the task yourself because it will take 15 minutes, spend 30 minutes teaching someone else how to do it. And instead of jumping into the project, give your project architect the space to lead. And that might be uncomfortable. Good. Because the next stage of your firm probably isn't going to be created by doing more of exactly what got you here. The architect who started your firm got you this far. Respect that person. Be grateful for everything they did. But don't assume that's the person who can take the firm where you need to go next. Your architecture firm can't outgrow you. So if you want the firm to grow, maybe the next project you need to work on is you. If you enjoyed this episode of EntreArchitect Podcast, please share a link with a friend, because that's how we've continued to grow and serve thousands more small firm architects just like you. Thank you to our sponsors for this episode. Links to the sponsors and all the resources we discussed today, they are all available in the show notes for this episode at entrearchitect.com/podcast. EntreArchitect is a proud member of the Gable Media Network. It's the multimedia network moving the architecture, engineering, and construction industries forward through the power of storytelling. You can earn AIA continuing education credits by listening to select episodes of this podcast and many others at gablemedia.com/members. And if you are a small firm architect, listen up. Join us today at EntreArchitect Network. It's the worldwide community for entrepreneur architects. We've been around since 2012, and our basic level is now free to join. Yes, you can join EntreArchitect Network for free. And that gives you access to valuable business resources and our global community of architects. And you can upgrade anytime for live coaching, AIA-approved training, and mastermind support. So visit EntreArchitect.com to learn more and to get started. My name is Mark R. LePage. Thank you for listening to the EntreArchitect Podcast. Love, learn, share.